I thank you very much for tuning in to That Will Nevr Work podcast. Of course, we have a banger for you today. So, my question for y'all today, when we have this place where we're in this really interesting place, and that most interesting place can also be a dangerous place, a place that driven entrepreneurs can live, but it's not called failure. It's this robot mode idea, right? It's the grinding, the relentlessness, the high-functioning numbness where you're doing everything and feeling nothing, moving fast and going nowhere. So our guest today, Rob, he lived that reality firsthand, from chasing success while silently unraveling to sleeping on a yoga mat in the gym to hearing the final words of his dying father that cracked everything open. And what he built from that wreckage became a scientific, human, and deeply practical framework for building the kind of confidence, resilience, and energy that doesn't just perform under pressure, but it compounds upon it. Thank you very much for listening. We'll talk about it right after this.
Educate, empower, enable, impact. Thank you for tuning in to That Will Nevr Work, an award-winning podcast where we share inspiring information and personal experiences related to business and the entrepreneurial journey from those who are leaders in their respective field. Now, here's your host, author and business coach, Maurice.
My guest is grounded, he's science-backed, he's human, he's resilient, he's strategic, energizing, and he is heart-forward. I thank y'all very much for introducing this guest, to welcoming this guest onto the show, Rob. Now, Rob, I try to do the research to pronounce your name, but every time I see it, I want to pronounce it incorrectly, unfortunately. I have it in my back pocket. Can you please tell us your last name, please?
Yeah, well, I would love to, actually. But long story short, I've never actually was told how to correctly pronounce it. But
really?
My whole life, I've just been told that it's Trazy.
Trazy, so. Okay. Yeah, because I don't know, I want to say Traxy, and I listened to all these other episodes. Like I said, I did my homework, and it seemed like there's always been a little, not inconsistency.
Yeah. You know, I that's why I usually, like, in the coaching world, I just go by Coach Rob, or just Rob is cool. So whatever's the easiest.
Okay.
But I appreciate it. And I love that you threw that disclaimer in there that I am human, too, because nowadays you got to double down on that, too, because of all the AI and everything in the world, right? So I thought that was good, because I knew where you were saying with it, but somebody else, too, might just be like, oh, like AI?
Right. And so those of you that are listening out there, understand that this is not an AI podcast. This is totally real and uncut. So, but I thank you very much for coming on the show. So you've built an entire coaching philosophy around the idea of breaking out of that robot mode, literally, and this cycle of overwork and stagnation where driven people are grinding constantly but not actually growing. And your personal story is at the heart of it. So let me start there. What did robot mode actually feel like for you from the inside? And what was that specific moment about your father's final words crack that cycle open in a way that nothing else had in the past?
Yeah. So that's a great question. And the answer might almost be too simple. So you were asking, like, what was I feeling when I was in that robot mode? And the answer is nothing. Because when you're in this robot mode, that's when it's kind of like the over extreme version of flow state. Like, you're moving, you're operating, you're efficient, you're getting stuff done. And that's great. It's good to flip into robot mode and get a lot of stuff done when you need to. But the problem is when you can't flip back out of robot mode. Because as of right now, at least with AI and stuff like that, like, robots still don't feel.
Right.
Like, they get stuff done. But when we're in human mode and we're genuinely being ourselves, that's when we can experience the different feelings and the awareness of what's going on around us. And when I was going through this bout of being stuck in robot mode, I had flipped that switch and essentially broke it. And because my entire life up to that point, when I was finishing up grad school, kind of pumping out my business and such, I built my entire identity off of my work ethic. So from schoolwork to sports and everything in between, I took pride in being able to push a little bit harder, grind a little bit longer than maybe the next or the normal person. So when I got into entrepreneurship, I was like, wait a second, I can essentially make as much money as I want. And all I have to do is just work a little bit more, just push a little bit longer. I was like, man, this is going to be simple. And at first it was great. Like I was making money, stuff was going well. I built my book of business up to this point where I was working 16, sometimes 17 hours a day. And it was great, but I couldn't flip back out. And once I kept going, I was feeding this sensation that just kind of kept pushing me because that's all I knew. And it wasn't until my father got sick and him passing away for it to really kind of click into my head. And when he had passed, it was the first like eye-opening experience for me. Like, oh, wait, maybe I'm not building the life that I want to be living. But it was too difficult for me to really process the emotions because all of a sudden I went from emotionless and unconscious to, wow, I'm flooded with everything. So I just flipped the switch right back into robot mode and I went right back to work. I went 3 years straight without taking a day off. And then my dad passed away. I took that day off. And then 3 days later, I took off for his funeral. But other than that, I went right back to the grind because that grind now became a distraction from the things that I needed to handle. And it would take me another year or so for me to realize like, hey, there's some things need to change. And then that's what started me down this whole journey for my personal brand, figuring out what it is that I really want to be teaching and coaching. Cause I love coaching. I love working together with people and I love building, creating more impact. And I share a lot about this in my recent TEDx talk that I just gave, but basically it was like this journey for me to figure out like, okay, how do I keep the speed? How do I keep optimizing without losing myself? And that became the whole process and adapting what made me successful in the realm of strength and conditioning and taking those principles and now applying them to entrepreneurs and owner operators so they don't make the same sacrifices that I made to really help them redefine what it takes to be successful.
So we're talking about awareness, and I have if you listen to Rob's story, there's a whole lot of moments in Rob's life that he shares, right? If you listen to any other information he shares, there's a lot of awareness moments that Rob is like, oh, wow, here we go, right? But here's the thing, and I'm bringing this up because a lot of times we're not aware of, especially as entrepreneurs. Yes, we're grinding or whatever it is, but we're not aware of what we're actually running from, right? You know, we're not or what we think that we're running to. So give us an idea of what either one of those paths, pick one, you could choose one, that someone might be trying to run away from or run to. They're not aware of like how they really are just spinning their wheels and not going anywhere on that, on that hamster wheel.
Well, two perfect examples of that running away and running towards or being unsure where you're running is that story of me with that robot mode, right? So like when I was grinding, I didn't have that end zone in vision. I just kept going. Like I'd hit a financial milestone and it was just bump it up to the next one, bump it up to the next one. I didn't have a clear understanding of where I wanted to go because I didn't really have an idea of what I actually wanted. I just kept working towards what everybody else was assuming or telling me what I should be working towards. And then when he passed, I was trying to run from that backstory of like, okay, now I've already built this thing. I've wasted all this time, years. I'm never going to get time back with my father or the relationships and friends that I have. So I'm like, okay, well now I'm stuck kind of moving because I can't run away from it. So that got me caught in that trap. But then when you slow things down and you force yourself to shift back into this human mode and you start to bring a little bit of awareness, you can start to paint better pictures of where you're trying to go. You can navigate your direction that you're trying to get. You can make better decisions. And for myself, it just comes down to just asking a couple questions like, okay, well, what's important to me right now? Where am I trying to get to? And am I growing into a new version of myself with this thing that I'm doing? Or am I just simply growing tired? And then the answers to those questions help me begin to make better decisions. And as long as I keep going back to those, it's like a flag at the top of the mountain. It's positioned up there and I know, okay, well, should I take this trail or should I take that trail? As long as I keep looking up and I know I'm moving closer to that mountain peak, then I'm making a better decision.
So let's use this idea of being human. And Like I said, I did my research. And so you tell a story of where you still think you're physically fit, right? And you still out there doing your thing. Then someone asks you to come and join a team.
Mm-hmm.
And then you question yourself whether or not you're questioning yourself, really, really questioning yourself whether or not you're still an athlete or not, especially after all these years where you had been, right? And so sometimes all of us have that aha moment, that maybe we have matured just a little bit, maybe our focus is off just a little bit, but we question really that, I'm going to say title, if you will, of whether or not we are still that. What was that like for you? Of, hey, you know what, I'm moving along, but I'm not necessarily totally aware if I can still reach that peak level of life.
Yeah, and I love what you're bringing up here, because this, going back to what I said earlier, like, remember, I built my identity on working hard and my grit, and I went from schoolwork to sports. That's who I was, and that always landed me in somewhat of a leadership role or a captain type position for a lot of the different sports teams that I had been on through the years. And we won a bunch of championships across things like football, like wrestling. And in college, after playing football, I shifted over into rugby. And same level of success, led the team to some really big championships. And that was awesome because I was strong and fast. And you fast forward a few years or a decade or so, I found myself standing on the sidelines of another rugby pitch. And I was sitting there and I was excited. I was like amped up, reminiscing on the college Rob days. And I'm excited to get out there. And it took about maybe 5 minutes for me to realize that I wasn't college Rob anymore. Like present day Rob, he needs ibuprofen just to show up, sort of thing. And it was frustrating. My passes were sloppy. My tackles were high, which is a penalty. So I was like constantly out of position, costing us our performance. And it was frustrating and embarrassing. And I kept asking myself, like, why am I playing so poorly? And then it hit me, both physically, because I got tackled very hard. And then also like metaphorically, it hit me and I was like, well, I'm not college Rob anymore. So why don't I position myself a little bit better? Like set up, like take a couple steps back into the side for defense, or run up a little bit faster on the line. And once I started doing that, things started to shift and I started to play a little bit better. And that started to kind of compound over time through the game. And one play led into another play, into a bigger play. And this set us up for better success. And we ended up winning. And I actually got to bring home the honors of man of the match. And that was super exciting for me. And that eye-opening lesson was entrepreneurship, robot mode, wherever you're at. If you keep trying to play this or play as you used to be, or trying to get back to this previous version or successful version of yourself, you're never going to generate any momentum moving forward. So when you ask those questions and you start to position yourself with more awareness, you can begin to play the game as who you are now, and then take a step further, play the game as who you're trying to become. Because when you step into those positions and start acting like this bigger, more successful version of yourself, you can make the better decisions that'll line up and compound more plays, whether it's one day, day 2, day 4, day 5, it starts to build up, and you build those habits, you take those actions, you become that successful version of yourself before you have that quote unquote success already. And you do that just by a little bit more awareness.
So let me ask you a question then. Did you take for granted that you could just flip the switch whenever you wanted to?
You talking about like back when I was in college and stuff? Or?
Yeah, I mean, because you're talking about, hey, in college, right? You thought that, hey, I'm this person. This is my identity, right? And now some years later, you're back on that same platform, quote unquote, right? You're in that same position. But did you take for granted, like, hey, you know what? This is who I was. I could flip the switch. I could turn it right back on. So I'm saying that because sometimes we could take that moment for granted of, hey, you know what? This is where I have been. This is my experiences or whatever it is, not realizing that, you know what? Some things have changed, right? Like you said, maybe I've gained a little bit of weight. maybe my feet are a little bit bigger, so my cleats don't fit the same like they used to, right? So the question is that did you take for granted of being able to flip the switch on and off and say, you know what, I can go right back to being, Heisman Trophy idea, Rob, versus the one that has to work a little bit harder, put a little bit more effort into what I'm trying to accomplish.
Oh, 100% too. And for the longest time, I've been in the gym pretty much since 7th grade. So I'd be always training. And to be honest, my training hasn't really changed too much over the years. And one thing that I like to do every year around my birthday is I try to challenge myself. I really push myself to some of the limits. And I like to do something that I'm not really comfortable with. So it kind of expands my comfort zone. And a few years back, I decided, I was like, all right, you know what? I ran my first marathon a year or two ago, and I hate running. So, I'm going to see. I'm going to go out. I'm going to try to run for 24 hours. I'm going to see where I can get to. I want to see the distance that I can push myself to get to. So it was a Friday afternoon, 2 p.m. I started, and I go outside, and birthday's in December too, so it's a little cold up here in the Northeast.
Yeah, right.
I'm running. And after a couple of hours, I come inside. I realized I haven't had any water. I haven't taken a break. And I was like, all right, let me take a little breather real quick and refresh. And at this time, I had already hit 16 miles. So I was like, man, this is pretty sweet. This is awesome. Went inside. I started hitting the treadmill because it was getting pretty dark out. And the heat inside started causing some swelling to happen. My legs started blowing up. And I just kept running. And then after a couple of miles, I would decrease the speed a little bit, and then I would decrease the speed a little bit again, and then some more. And by the end of the night, around midnight-ish, I could barely maintain 0.5 on the treadmill. I didn't want to hold on or anything, so I'm just slugging away, basically at a crawl. And I was like, man, this is brutal. So all right, I'm going to lay down. I'm going to elevate my feet. I'm going to give myself a little rest, and I'm going to come back out down at 5 a.m., and I'm going to hit this again. So I did, and I came back down, and a little bit more refreshed. I can start off at 7, and same thing started decreasing. But I kept pushing. And by 2 p.m., so the full 24 hours later, I successfully completed a double marathon. I ran 54 miles. So I doubled my best ever. So I was pretty pumped and proud of myself. But at the same time, I significantly fell short of my actual goal. I really wanted to go out and try to hit 100 miles. But I realized that I'm not that version of myself. I can't just turn it on and just run forever. This is a lesson for me that I need to prep a little bit more. I need to be a little more smart of where I'm going. I need to review what I'm doing on a little bit better of a basis and more frequent basis so that I can continue to elevate and move forward. So yeah, I might've hit some good milestones for myself, but I fell way short because I failed to prepare and I failed to review on how I was doing.
And so in that, I'm listening to what you're talking about, right? And there's one factor that sometimes we don't consider in a moment like that. Environment, right? What was your environment like being outside versus in the house, right? So if you're outside, another place of air versus one that might be a little more recycled in the house, right? Is it cooler outside? So are you a little more relaxed versus the heat, more tension? So there's some other things in that moment that you're referring to that sometimes we don't understand that maybe the environment can kind of change our trajectory a little bit. And I'm saying that because a lot of times we don't understand the people that are in our environment also affects us. They could take away our air, right? They can make us hot or cold. So how important is that to have maybe the right people in our environment or, in order for us to get to the next level?
Oh my God. Yeah. It's insanely important. And going back to what I was saying before, you got to review, you got to pay attention to what's going on. You got to do a little audit because somebody might be helping elevate you, bring you to the next level one day, but then the other 6 days of the week, he might be dragging you down. And unless you have something in place where you can kind of pay attention to this and seeing how is this person actually genuinely helping me or just slowing me down, could be a huge determiner of where you're going to be going. When I first launched my dietary supplement line, I had a lot of friends coming to me like, oh yeah, let me get some free protein. I'll like post on social media or whatnot. And I was like, yeah. So I kept sending it out to everybody. And then I realized like, man, all I'm doing is just paying for everybody else's supplements. Like,
right.
What? No one's bringing it. No one's helping me at all here. And then when I finally got to the point where I was like, guys, this is like my livelihood. Like, don't you guys want to support my business? Like, do you guys want to like maybe buy some of my products? They all turned the cold shoulder on me. And I was like, geez, all right. So I guess now I see where my true friends are at. And that was a thing that I probably would have just kept funneling and giving it to them thinking like, hey, I have to do this for them because they're my friends. But you never know. Sometimes they turn into bad apples or whatnot.
And I want to leave everybody off with this idea. And I would like really for you to talk about that, because that's a great point. Sometimes we don't realize that those people that are closest to us, how much they might be pulling away from us. So how did you really feel in that moment? Because sometimes we're in that grind mode. We think, you know what? I need to put this stuff out there, all that type of stuff, and not understanding what's really going on. Again, the idea of awareness. And so how did that make you feel in that moment to say, you know what? Oh man, I might have to fall back real quick.
It's tough, right? Because you only know what you know. So you think people are your friends. You think that they're looking out for your best interest, but like very similar situation, like family might be slowing you down. They might be trying to protect you, and they might have it with the best interest. They're like, maybe that's not such a great idea to invest in that coaching program. It's kind of expensive. You don't really know. And like, yeah, it's maybe a little more logical to listen to them, but they're just trying to protect you from making a bad decision. So you don't know what you don't know. And I feel like you really only gain that awareness through experience. So sometimes you got to be okay to take certain risks. And sometimes you need to be okay with kind of not burning bridges with certain friends or colleagues, but maybe taking a step back and like taking some of their feedback with less weight to it. So you can kind of adjust and figure things out on your own.
So I should think outside the box, maybe become a little bit more independent thinking. Is that what you're trying to say to me, Rob?
Yeah, you hear it. You got it.
I'm saying that because a lot of times as entrepreneurs, again, it's the robot mode mentality. We're so caught up in one way or one idea, and that we're no longer innovative. We're no longer creative in the processes and trying to get to our desired outcome. And so how important is that for you to think outside of the box, to maybe not have to follow everybody else's guru idea?
It seems like each day that passes, it becomes more and more important. And I kind of started to do this through meditation and just kind of pausing and letting myself just kind of slow my brain down and just kind of sit in silence. And because we got so many distractions all day long, right? Our phones, social media, everything's always pulling at our attention. But if you can kind of pause and slow things down and just sit and just look at your thoughts, like, hey, what am I thinking about? What is going through? That is like showing me that, okay, now I'm organizing and prioritizing, but then also in that period of stoppage, that's where creativity starts to come through. And I can see that it becomes more and more important because with technology and everything today, like you can execute pretty easily, but if you have that next level creativity and you can kind of plan and you have that bigger vision, I think that's what's really going to separate people, especially when the playing field becomes a little more leveled as technology advances.
Now, because you are an athlete, naturally an athlete, you have that mentality of separating yourself, of being or pushing yourself to another level and flipping that switch to say, you know what? I'm just going to use something basic. These 10 push-ups ain't enough. I need to get to 12, right? These 5 chin-ups ain't enough. I need to get to 7 or 8 or whatever it might be. And so those individuals that have been playing it safe and just doing the average, and they need that little bit of oomph to get to the next level. Rob, where can they find you and your information and talk to you and say, you know what, Rob, I'm having a challenge today, bro. Help me out.
Yeah. I mean, the easiest place to kind of get connected with me is social media. It's just Rob Tracz on all the different places to find people. But like mostly hanging out on LinkedIn and Instagram. And for everybody who's kind of interested in enhancing their performance, I have a great quiz assessment that teaches you like, okay, of the principles that I kind of teach to everybody, the 6 principles of prime performance, I call them. Take this quick assessment. It tells you what your biggest leak might be, and then gives you actionable items to execute and improve on that. And that's totally free for everybody out there. And like, you take the assessment as many times as you want, and it'll just keep pumping out more and more information for you to keep leveling up on your own at your own pace.
Nice. Rob, I thank you very much for coming on the show and sharing with us today.
Of course, man. Thank you so much for having me on.
Sure, no problem. So, but Rob, I got to ask you the question, man. My would you rather question. So, Rob, again, no right or wrong answer. Would you rather choose 3 doors or a fork in the road?
You know, I feel like this question itself is a fork in the road kind of question. And I'm going to go with the fork in the road type of question.
Okay. That's a very interesting point. You're right.
50-50 for whatever the fork in the road is. And I like that.
Yeah, no one else had pointed that out. So, like, I like that point of view. I've had someone say recently they choose the fork in the road, but they're not doing the fork. They're going straight through. They don't care about it. They don't care about the road. And with the doors, people said glass, you know, all these other type of things. They even just open. So I like your point of view of just saying, hey, this is a fork in the road moment. So I appreciate that very initial look at what the question represents. I appreciate that, Rob.
Of course. I appreciate you, man. This is awesome.
Thank you very much. And of course, everyone, if you're out there, if you're doing your thing, please remember Rob's information will be in the show notes. So always come back and click on the link. So, of course, I have to leave you with an idea or a challenge. So this week, I want you to run an honest robot mode audit on yourself, i.e. go to Rob's website, which is the link will be in the description. But also, I want you to look at it from this perspective as well. I want you to answer 3 questions with complete honesty. Am I regularly working more than 8 hours without meaningful recovery? Is my energy declining rather than compounding over time? And am I unclear on whether my daily activity is actually moving me toward the life I want? And if you answer yes to any of these, you are possibly in robot mode. And the first move out of it is not working harder. It is stopping, like Rob said, long enough to redesign the system. So make one specific change to your daily structure this week that prioritizes your energy over your output. I thank you very much for listening today. And of course, I'll talk to you just a little bit later.
Thanks for listening. Follow Maurice Chisholm on social media to stay connected and check back weekly for new episodes. Until next time, that will never work. Or will it?